They said the room was silent, but that wasn't true. It hummed, not with sound, but with expectation. A low, invisible pressure that settled behind the eyes and beneath the ribs, like the moment before a confession. Every student at Orsham Academy entered it alone. No instructions, no observers, just the door, the chair, and the test. On the morning of his third assessment, Ivan Halra stood outside the room with his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. He had passed the first 2 sessions without incident. His scores had been exemplary. High compliance, the report had said. Minimal resistance. Excellent candidate. But something had shifted since then. Not in him. He was sure of that. But in the room itself. He stepped inside. The door sealed behind him with a soft click. The chair was exactly where it always was, center of the room, facing the blank wall. No cameras. No screens. Just the chair and the silence. Ivan sat. He waited. Then the questions began. They didn't come as words. They came as impulses, subtle nudges in the mind, like someone gently pressing on a thought. The first was simple. Raise your left hand. He did. The second, close your eyes. He obeyed. The third, imagine your mother's voice. He hesitated. The room pulsed. It wasn't pain. It wasn't sound. It was something else, an internal shift, like a thread being pulled taut. Ivan opened his eyes. The chair beneath him felt colder. The wall in front of him seemed closer. He tried to focus. Imagine your mother's voice. He did. The room relaxed. That was the pattern. Obedience brought calm. Hesitation brought tension. Resistance brought something worse. On his first visit, Ivan had tested the limits. He had refused to prompt, stand up, and turn around. He had stayed seated. The room had responded instantly. The air thickened. His pulse slowed. His thoughts became sluggish, like trying to run underwater. He had complied after 30 seconds. The effect had vanished. But the report had noted it, momentary resistance. Corrected. Now, on his third visit, the prompts grew stranger. Think of someone you hate. Imagine hurting them. Smile. Ivan obeyed. He didn't want to, but he obeyed. The room stayed calm. Then came the final prompt. Lie. No context. No target. Just the word. Ivan blinked. He opened his mouth. He said, I'm happy. The room pulsed again, but this time, it didn't relax. The pressure increased. The walls seemed to shimmer. Ivan felt his heartbeat in his teeth. He tried again. I'm proud of who I am. Nothing. I trust the system. Still nothing. He was lying. He knew that. But the room didn't respond. It was waiting for something else. And then he understood. It wasn't asking him to lie. It was asking him to believe the lie. Ivan closed his eyes. He tried to summon the feeling. Pride. Trust. Happiness. He tried to make them real. He pictured the academy's crest. He pictured the head evaluator's face. He pictured the reports, the scores, the future they promised. He said, I believe in this. The room exhaled. The pressure vanished. The walls returned to normal. The chair warmed beneath him. A soft chime rang from somewhere unseen. The door unlocked. Ivan stood. He walked out. In the corridor, the assistant evaluator waited with a tablet. She didn't smile. She never did. She simply nodded and said, You may return to class. He did. But something. He returned to class, but the room stayed with him. Not physically. There were no visible marks, no lingering sounds. But in the way his thoughts moved, slower now, more deliberate, as if each idea had to pass through a filter before reaching his mouth. The other students didn't notice. They never did. They were trained not to ask questions, not to observe deviations, not to interpret silence. The academy taught them that compliance was clarity, and clarity was survival. That afternoon, during ethics simulation, he was paired with a girl named Vel. She had sharp eyes and a voice that never rose above a whisper. Their task was simple: respond to a hypothetical crisis involving resource allocation and emotional fallout. The simulation presented a scenario where a group of citizens had to choose between saving a child or preserving a data vault containing decades of emotional research. Vel chose the vault. He hesitated. The system flagged him. A red dot appeared on his interface. Delay in decision detected, it said. Vel glanced at him. You're not supposed to hesitate, she whispered. He nodded. I know. But he had, and the system had noticed. That night, he received a message, not through the standard channels, but slipped beneath his door, an envelope, unmarked, sealed with a symbol he didn't recognize. Inside was a single sentence. The room is not testing obedience. It's testing belief. He stared at the words for hours. The next morning, he asked the assistant evaluator if he could review his previous session. She frowned. That's not permitted. Why? Because reflection breeds resistance. He didn't argue. He knew better. But the sentence haunted him. That evening, he returned to the room. Not for a scheduled assessment, but alone, unauthorized. The door was locked, but the system recognized him. It opened. Inside, the chair waited. The silence welcomed him. He sat. Nothing happened. No prompts. No pulses. Just stillness. He closed his eyes. He whispered, "I believe in this." The room did not respond. He tried again. "I believe in the academy." Still nothing. He stood. He walked to the wall. He touched it. It was warm. Alive. He pressed his palm against it and felt something shift. Not in the wall, but in himself. A memory surfaced. Not his own. A boy, younger, crying in the room, begging to leave. The wall pulsed. The memory faded. He stepped back. The door opened. He left. The next day, his interface displayed a new notification. Unauthorized entry detected. Compliance score adjusted. He was summoned to the head evaluator's office. The room was cold, clinical, filled with screens showing fragments of student behavior. The evaluator was tall, expressionless, eyes like polished stone. "You entered without permission," he said. "Yes." "Why?" "I needed to understand." "Understand what?" "What the room wants." The evaluator leaned forward. "The room doesn't want. It measures." "Then what is it measuring?" The evaluator paused. "Alignment." "With what?" "With the system." He was dismissed. No punishment. No warning. Just a note added to his file. Curiosity increasing. Monitor closely. That night, he received another envelope. This one contained a map. Not of the academy, but of something beneath it. A network of rooms, corridors, nodes. At the center was a chamber labeled Origin. He memorized it. He burned the map. Over the next week, he began to notice things. Students who smiled too easily. Instructors who repeated phrases verbatim. Interfaces that glitched when asked about the room. He started keeping a journal. Not digitally. On paper, hidden beneath his mattress. He wrote everything. Every prompt. Every deviation. Every feeling. He began to dream of the room. Not as it was, but as it could be. Filled with mirrors, with voices, with versions of himself arguing over choices he hadn't made. One night, he dreamed of the Origin. A vast chamber filled with chairs, each occupied by a student staring at a blank wall. Above them, a screen displayed a single word, believe. He woke shaking. The next day, he skipped class. He followed the map from memory, through the maintenance tunnels, past the filtration systems, down into the substructure. He found the door. It was old, rusted, marked with the same symbol as the envelopes. It opened. Inside was a room unlike any he'd seen. No chair, no wall, just a console and a single screen. On the screen was a question, "What do you believe?" He typed, "I don't know." The screen responded, "Then why do you comply?" He typed, "Because I'm afraid." The screen paused. Then, "Fear is not belief." He typed, "Then what is?" The screen went dark. The console powered down. The door locked behind him. He waited. Hours passed. Then the wall opened. A figure entered. Not an evaluator. Not a student. Someone else. They wore no uniform. Their face was blurred, shifting. They sat beside him. "You're not supposed to be here," they said. "I know." "Then why are you?" "Because I need to know if I'm real." The figure nodded. That's the question the room was built to answer. And it hasn't yet. The figure stood. "But you're closer than most." The wall closed. The console rebooted. The screen displayed a new message. Compliance is not the goal. It is the gateway. He left the Origin. He returned to class. No one noticed. But the room did. And it was waiting. He began to speak less. Not out of fear, but calculation. Every word was now a signal, every silence a test. The Academy's systems monitored tone, rhythm, hesitation. He learned to modulate himself, to mimic certainty. But inside, he was unraveling. The message from the origin, compliance is not the goal. It is the gateway, echoed through him like a code he hadn't yet cracked. He started watching others more closely. Vel, for instance, had begun to glitch. Not visibly, but in her choices. During a simulation involving moral triage, she selected an option that preserved emotional integrity over systemic stability. The system flagged her. She smiled. I wanted to see what would happen. He didn't respond, but he wrote it down. That night, another envelope arrived. This one contained a phrase. There are others. Beneath it, a list of names. Vel was one of them. So was a boy named Karen, who had once refused to answer a prompt about loyalty, and a girl named Sira, who had been reassigned after questioning the Academy's founding myth. He approached Vel the next day. Do you remember the origin? He asked. She didn't flinch. I never saw it, but I've heard of it. From who? Someone who disappeared. Why? Because they stopped believing. That evening, he found Karen in the archives. The boy was scanning old compliance logs, cross-referencing behavioral anomalies. Looking for patterns? He asked. Karen nodded. They say the room is neutral, but it's not. It adapts. To what? To doubt. Sira was harder to find. She had been reassigned to the peripheral wing, where students studied emotional decay and memory erosion. He visited her under the pretense of research. She recognized him immediately. You've been to the origin, she said. Yes. Then you know it's not a place. It's a threshold. A threshold to what? To yourself. She handed him a fragment, a torn page from an old manual. It read, the room does not measure obedience. It measures the architecture of belief. He added it to his journal. Over the next week, the three of them met in secret. They shared fragments, theories, dreams. Vel believed the room was sentient. Karen thought it was a mirror. Sira claimed it was a trap designed to expose the illusion of choice. He wasn't sure, but he knew they were close to something. One night, the system glitched. All interfaces went dark. The Academy entered lockdown. Students were confined to quarters. But he received a message, this time not in an envelope, but through his interface, bypassing protocol. It said, the room is open. Come now. He didn't hesitate. He navigated the tunnels, reached the origin. The door was ajar. Inside, the console was gone. In its place stood a mirror, not reflective, but translucent, showing flickers of other rooms, other students, other choices. Vel appeared beside him. It's showing us what we could have been. Karen arrived next. Or what we were before compliance. Sira entered last. Or what we'll become if we keep going. The mirror pulsed. A voice emerged, not spoken, but felt. You are not alone. But you are not yet free. The room shifted. The walls dissolved. They were standing in a simulation, one none of them had seen before. A city in ruins. Citizens wandering, interfaces broken. A voice repeated, belief systems compromised. Recalibration required. They moved through the simulation. Every choice they made was recorded. But this time, the system didn't flag them. It adapted. It responded. It asked questions. Why did you choose empathy? Why did you reject authority? Why did you hesitate? They answered honestly. The simulation ended. They were returned to the origin. The mirror was gone. In its place, a door. Unmarked. Closed. The voice returned. You may leave. But if you do, you cannot return. Vel stepped forward. What's beyond? Silence. Karen hesitated. Is this the final test? Sira touched the door. Or the first real choice? He looked at them. If we leave, we lose everything. Our scores. Our status. Our safety. Vel nodded. But we gain ourselves. Karen opened the door. Light spilled in. Not bright. Not warm. Just real. They stepped through. One by one. He was last. As he crossed the threshold, he felt something shift, not in the room, but in him. A shedding. A release. The door closed behind them. They were outside the Academy. Not physically, but ideologically. No interfaces. No prompts. Just silence. And possibility. They walked. Together. Toward whatever came next. They didn't know how long they had been walking. Time outside the academy moved differently, less like a sequence and more like a pressure, a weight that settled into their bones. The landscape was unfamiliar, not ruined but rearranged, as if someone had taken pieces of memory and stitched them into terrain. Buildings flickered between styles. Streets looped back on themselves. Signs displayed words that changed when read twice. Vel called it the echo zone. Karen believed it was a simulation layered over reality. Sira said it was the residue of belief systems collapsing. He didn't offer a theory. He was listening, watching. The four of them found shelter in a structure that resembled a library but contained no books, only terminals, each displaying fragments of thought, unfinished sentences, emotional equations, diagrams of internal states. One terminal showed a phrase: compliance is a language. Belief is its accent. Another displayed a map of the academy, but distorted, with new wings labeled doubt, memory, and origin superscript 2. They began to catalog the fragments. Vel noticed patterns, certain phrases repeated across terminals, always in different contexts. Karen built a system to track emotional resonance, assigning values to each fragment based on how it made them feel. Sira started dreaming in symbols, waking with sketches of rooms that didn't exist. He kept writing, not in a journal now, but directly into the terminals, feeding them questions. What is the architecture of belief? Can compliance be unlearned? Is freedom a system or a rupture? One night, a terminal responded, not with text, but with an image, a room, familiar yet wrong. The chair was missing. The walls were mirrors. In the center stood a figure, blurred, shifting. Beneath it, a caption, "You are being remembered." They stared at it for hours. Vel whispered, "It's watching us." Karen disagreed. "It's reconstructing us." Sira touched the screen. "Or it's asking us to finish the story." The next day, the structure changed. The walls reconfigured. A new corridor appeared, leading downward. They followed it. At the end was a door. Not locked. Not marked. Just waiting. Inside was a room. Not the compliance room. Something older. More raw. The walls were covered in writing. Layers upon layers of questions, answers, refusals. In the center was a device. Not a console. Not a mirror. Something else. It pulsed. They approached. The device spoke, not aloud, but inside them. "You have exited the system." "But the system has not exited you." Vel asked. "Then what do we do?" The device responded, "You must rewrite your architecture." Karen said, "How?" "By remembering what you were before belief was assigned." Sira stepped forward. "Show us." The device activated. The room dissolved. They were inside memories, not their own, but collective, stitched from thousands of students who had passed through the academy. A boy choosing silence over truth. A girl erasing her emotions to pass a test. A group rewriting history to preserve stability. Each memory ended with the same phrase: compliance achieved. Identity suspended. They watched. They absorbed. They began to feel fractures, places where their own memories had been overwritten. Vel remembered a sister she hadn't spoken of. Karen recalled a moment of rebellion erased from his record. Sira saw herself refusing entry to the academy, only to be reprogrammed. He remembered nothing, just a blank space where belief had been installed. The device spoke again. "You are not broken. You are overwritten." They returned to the room. The walls had changed. Now they displayed their own thoughts, their own questions. Vel wrote, "What if belief is a virus?" Karen wrote, "What if compliance is a cure?" Sira wrote, "What if freedom is forgetting?" He wrote, "What if I was never real?" The device pulsed. A new door appeared. This one marked exit protocol. They hesitated. Vel said, "If we leave, we lose the fragments." Karen said, "If we stay, we become the system." Sira said, "If we rewrite ourselves, what do we become?" He stepped forward. "We become the question." The door opened. Beyond it was not a world, but a void, filled with potential, with unfinished systems, with belief structures waiting to be built. The device whispered, "You may construct your own architecture, but it will be tested." They stepped through, one by one, into the void, into the question. The void was not empty. It was layered, recursive, a space where thought shaped terrain and memory bent light. They moved through it slowly, each step generating echoes, fragments of past selves, discarded beliefs, simulations that had never run. Vel saw a version of herself teaching compliance theory to a room of blank-faced students. Karen encountered a corridor filled with his own doubts, each one whispering a different justification. Sira walked through a forest of symbols, each tree etched with a forgotten emotion. He found nothing, just silence, a space that refused to reflect him. They regrouped near a structure that resembled a temple but pulsed like a machine. Its walls were inscribed with questions, some familiar, some impossible. What is the weight of a suspended identity? Can belief be recursive? Is freedom a form of compliance? They entered. Inside, the air was thick with static. A central node awaited them, surrounded by 4 chairs. Not like the academies. These were fluid, shifting, adapting to posture and mood. They sat. The node activated. You have exited the system, it said. You may now construct your own. Vel asked, what are the parameters? Undefined. Karen asked, what are the risks? Total. Sira asked, what is the purpose? To test belief without compliance. He asked nothing. The node pulsed. Begin. They were given tools, not physical, but conceptual. Vel shaped a framework based on emotional resonance, where decisions were weighted by their capacity to generate empathy. Karen built a logic engine that rejected binary outcomes, favoring recursive loops of ethical ambiguity. Sira designed a memory lattice that allowed identities to fragment and reform based on context. He stared at the blank space before him. He felt nothing. No ideas. No architecture. Just absence. The node spoke to him directly. You are still overwritten. He whispered. Then how do I begin? By refusing to comply with silence. He closed his eyes. He imagined a system where belief was not taught, but discovered, where each individual carried a seed of doubt that bloomed into understanding. He shaped it slowly, painfully, using fragments from his journal, echoes from the room, whispers from the origin. When he opened his eyes, the structure stood before him. A chamber of mirrors, each reflecting a different version of himself, compliant, defiant, erased, rewritten. The others approached. Vel said, it's unstable. Karen said, it's recursive. Sira said, it's dangerous. He said, it's mine. The node pulsed. Systems complete. Initiating test. The temple dissolved. They were placed inside their own architectures. Vel's world was flooded with emotion. Every choice triggered waves of feeling, overwhelming, beautiful, paralyzing. Karen's world looped endlessly. Each decision led to another, then back, then forward, never resolving. Sira's world fragmented. She became multiple selves, each navigating a different path, each questioning the others. His world was silent. The mirrors watched. He moved through them, encountering versions of himself that had made different choices. One who had never entered the room, one who had betrayed Vel, one who had complied completely and risen through the academy ranks. Each version asked him a question. Why did you hesitate? Why did you leave? Why did you return? He answered honestly. Because I didn't know. Because I needed to. Because I wasn't finished. The mirrors pulsed. The node returned. Final phase, integration. They were brought back together. Their systems overlapped, collided, merged. The node asked, will you comply with your own architecture? Vel said, no. I will question it. Karen said, no. I will revise it. Sira said, no. I will fragment it. He said, no. I will remember it. The node pulsed. Then you are ready. A final door appeared. Not marked. Not locked. Just waiting. They stepped through. Together. Into the final test. The final test was not a room. It was a condition. A state of being. They emerged into a space that resembled the academy, but was stripped of its structure. Walls flickered between transparency and opacity. Corridors led nowhere. Interfaces displayed only static. The system was present, but fractured. It no longer issued commands. It whispered, you are outside the loop. Vel touched a wall. It dissolved. Behind it was a memory, her first day at the academy, smiling, hopeful, unaware. Karen found a terminal that displayed his compliance score, frozen at 98. He deleted it. Ciro walked into a simulation that replayed her refusal to enter the academy, but this time, she walked away. He stood in silence. The mirrors were gone. The echoes were quiet. He felt something shift inside him. Not a revelation, but a release. The node appeared, hovering above them. Dimmer now, less certain. You have constructed belief systems. You have refused compliance. You have entered the final phase, observation. They were each given a task, not assigned, offered. Vel was asked to teach her system to a group of simulated students. She did, but changed the rules halfway through. Karen was asked to resolve an ethical loop. He refused, letting it remain open. Ciro was asked to choose a single identity. She chose all of them. He was asked to erase his architecture. He stared at the prompt. Erase, he whispered. The node pulsed. To complete the cycle. He hesitated. What happens if I don't? Then the system remains incomplete. He looked at the others. Vel said, you don't have to finish it. Karen said, you can let it remain unstable. Ciro said, you can choose ambiguity. He closed his eyes. He remembered the room, the chair, the silence, the mirror, the origin, the void, the temple, the node, the question. He whispered, I choose to remember. The prompt vanished. The node pulsed. Cycle interrupted. System destabilized. Observation complete. The space around them began to collapse, not violently, but gently, like a simulation being folded. The walls folded into light. The corridors dissolved into sound. The static became silence. They stood together. The node spoke one last time. You are no longer students. You are no longer compliant. You are no longer observed. Vel asked, then what are we? The node paused. You are architects. The space vanished. They found themselves in a new place. Not a simulation. Not a test. A real space. A city. Quiet. Waiting. No interfaces. No prompts. Just potential. They walked. Together. Toward the unknown. Toward the question. Toward the systems they would build. And somewhere, deep beneath the ruins of the academy, the compliance room remained. Silent. Watching. Waiting for the next architect to arrive.